Should you play your Havoc Demonhunter as Aldrachi Reaver and Mythic Plus? Today, we answer this question with data. Once we realized that Felskart is very competitive for Havoc and Mythic Plus, many players were hyped and started pumping keys with this smooth and simple spec. But the top Havoc players are still playing Aldrachi Reaver in most keys. Why? What does Aldrachi Reaver have to offer? A simple comparison of the two hero trees looks something like this. On the one hand, Felskart is easier, more forgiving, and does more burst AoE. On the other hand, Aldrachi Reaver is harder and more punishing, but does more priority damage and is more tanky. Felskart is easier to play because you only have to spam your buttons on cooldown and because any form of defense it provides is completely passive. On the contrary, Aldrachi Reaver has to manage multiple buffs and debuffs as well as soul fragments while its defense is active, so it requires better knowledge of the dungeons and when you're about to take damage. Moreover, Aldrachi Reaver can be way more punishing than Felskart. Each time you die, you lose Reaver's Glaive and all Art of the Glaive stacks. If you do not have the Hand or Sigil of Spite to start over, your damage will tank significantly. Now, despite all these issues, how much do you actually gain by playing Aldrachi Reaver? How much more priority damage can you do? To answer this question, I will use some data from my personal runs. I will show you a comparison between two very well executed dungeons. One Workshop plus 15 as Felskart and one Darkflame Cleft plus 15 as Aldrachi Reaver. The two dungeons are very different, so looking at the overall makes no sense. Instead, we will be looking at specific fights to compare single target DPS. The two dungeons were both completed in the same week with the same gear. The numbers might seem a little bit low, because these 15s were completed before the turbo boost, before the horrific visions and the new belt. However, all of these power gains apply to both hero specs equally, so the conclusions of this analysis are more or less consistent across time. We will start with Felskart in Mechagon Workshop. The first encounter we're looking at is Kujo, the mechanical dog, which is a pure single target fight with heavy downtime where you get to hide behind the boxes to stay alive. I managed to pull 1.6 million DPS in this fight, which is pretty good for Felskart that is cooldown dependent. So you get to blast everything while the boss is out, and then while you're hiding behind the box you wait for your cooldowns to come back without too much of a punishment for downtime in contrast to Aldrachi Reaver. The second encounter is Blastatron, the spider tank mini-boss before the maze. This is a pure single target fight with no downtime. Here all team members did pretty high single target, we had all cooldown timed properly, so I ended up at around 2 million single target. Moving on, we have the Head Machinist in the garden. This is a light cleave fight where you get to cleave the plants, the mechanical plants that the boss is summoning, and you also have some downtime depending how lucky or unlucky you get with the gears and the lasers that you have to dodge. I ended up at 1.64 million DPS here. Finally, we have King Mechagon, which is a pure single target fight, which again does have some downtime depending how lucky you get with the orbs that are jumping around and the asphyxiates in phase 1. We had all cooldowns and bloodlust, so I ended up at 1.71 million single target. Moving on to Aldrachi Reaver in Darkflame Cleft 15, we start with Blazicon, which is pure single target with some downtime depending on the candles that you need to light up. Here I ended up at 1.56 million single target. Then in the Candle King, which is again pure single target with some downtime depending how many pickaxes you are targeted with, so you need to destroy the candles, and how many circles you need to run out. Here I ended up at 1.75 million DPS, way higher than the other team members, but that is because both of them died one time each. Moving on, we have the Darkness, the last boss of the instance, which is a light cleave fight with some small adds, and there is some downtime depending on how often you get targeted by the debuff and you need to run out to bring in flames. Here we all did about 2 million DPS, I did specifically 2.07 million. And then we have an outlier, which is all Waxbeard, which is not a single target fight, it's a mass AoE fight and a mass funnel fight, as we will see later on. I completely dominated the DPS meters with way higher DPS than both the Retri Paladin and the Devastation Evoker. This is a small spoiler about what follows later in the video. If we put together all the numbers that we saw previously, we can easily see that the priority damage of both hero specs is pretty much the same in pure single target. Felskart is punished way less by downtime, while Aldrachi Reaver can utilize extra targets a little bit better through cleave and funnel. Now that we have compared the single target of both hero specs and we've seen that they are more or less equal, we want to see what happens in priority adds throughout the dungeon, where Aldrachi Reaver gets to funnel a lot of damage with Wounded Quarry from the AoE towards the main target. We will start with Rank Overseer, which are these huge kobolds that do the big roar AoE. Here you see I have completely dominated again my teammates, doing massive funnel damage, 41% of the overall damage on this priority target. Things get even better in the boss, All Waxbeard, where we have tons of small shitter adds that you get to AoE with Fury of the Aldrachi and funnel damage with Wounded Quarry, so I did 45% of the boss's HP. This is insane, this is almost 3 times what the Retri was doing. Here you see Vengeance Demonhunter also has the same mechanic because he's also Aldrachi Reaver, and even Vengeance out DPS'd the single target of the Devastation Evoker. Moving on, we have the Wandering Candle, which does a huge AoE. Once more, a lot of small adds are around. We get to funnel to this candle and completely destroy it, completely dominating our team members, almost doing double their damage. The same story continues with Corridor Creeper, which is these adds that do insane tank damage. Again, almost double the damage of other DPS on Corridor Creepers. The only thing we have to compare is the waste processing units, which are the only mob that really allows for funneling in Mechagon Workshop. And here we can see the damage meter. We're getting completely dominated by Arcane Mage. Of course, Arcane Mage is a funnel spec in contrast to Retribution Paladin and Devastation Evoker. Here, as Fellscard, we even beat again Retri Paladin by a lot. This Retri Paladin died twice in this part of the dungeon, and that's why the difference is so high while it normally shouldn't be. When it comes to survivability, the two hero specs have roughly the same self-healing. Fellscard healing comes from collective anguish, while Aldrachi Reaver generates more soul fragments that result to more self-healing. But on the damage reduction side, there is a big difference. Fellscard prevents 5% of any damage taken with set fire to the pain and takes it over 6 seconds as a dot, practically saving you from dying but overall preventing 0 damage. In cases where you take fire damage, this also provides a very strong passive 10% damage reduction. In all other situations, Aldrachi Reaver has a way superior talent that reduces damage taken by 10% for 5 seconds after casting Fellblade. Like I said earlier, this is a form of active damage mitigation that requires good knowledge of the dungeon. If played properly, it is safe to say that Aldrachi Reaver is at least 7 to 10% more tanky than Fellscard. Single target DPS is pretty much on par between Aldrachi and Fellscard, and Aldrachi is punished way more by mistakes and by downtime. But when it comes to priority mobs in side packs, the difference is huge. Aldrachi Reaver utilizes the funnel mechanic to completely destroy priority targets way better than Fellscard. In my opinion, this is a very powerful trick to have up your sleeve. These mobs do not only slow down your dungeon, they are also very dangerous, often leading to deaths and potentially even key depletes. Having this kind of funnel single target priority DPS is an extremely important feat, and that's what really Aldrachi Reaver brings to the table. Destroying these mobs as fast as possible, preventing them from casting their dangerous abilities over and over, while still doing pretty much the same overall DPS, completely destroying the priority target. So the question remains, should you play Aldrachi Reaver in Mythic Plus? And the answer is, if you can play it pretty well, then yes, it has a lot to offer, it can destroy priority mobs, and it can help you save your keys from depletion. If you want to know how to play Aldrachi Reaver to the maximum, I've put together an in-depth guide, and you can watch it by clicking the video screen or the link in the description. And as always, see you in the next one.